Hello, and thank you for joining us for another fun episode of our BNI San Diego podcast. And today it's going to be a short one. It's just going to be a conversation between you and I on the topic of what's the point of a mistake. So I want you to think about that phrase. What's the point of a mistake? I've been having some conversations with some of our amazing members here in BNI San Diego on the topic of what's the point of a mistake. Obviously, it's to learn something. It's to be able to look at things, differently. It's to solve. If you've come and you hit a wall or you made a mistake on something, there's a lot of opportunities to learn things about the particular mistake. But really, what I want to talk about today is as a leader, as an employee, as a parent, as a church leader, whatever it is, how do you show up when a mistake arises? Now, what do I mean by that? So let's face it, mistakes are going to happen. They always happen. They always do. It's how we progress in things. We wouldn't have gotten the light bulb if multiple hundreds upon thousands of mistakes weren't made. The key thing is that you keep going through the mistake, that you don't just stop, but that you keep going. But again, going back to the conversation of as a leader, what's the point of a mistake? So I want to talk about, how we show up. So there's a phrase that I love, and it goes something like this: leadership or leaders have to show up differently when, let's say, the stuff hits the fan. So leaders have to show up differently when the stuff hits the fan. Well, what does that mean? That means that when we're working with a team of people, if we're leading people, if it's me, an employee, that's just the two of us that I have right now, or I've got, 30 or 50 or 500 employees, as a leader, how am I showing up when a mistake arises? Because again, they will show up. Are we creating an environment that is conducive to people being very fearful when they make a mistake? Or are we creating a culture where mistakes are encouraged? Now, let me rephrase that. I don't mean like we want people to make mistake after mistake, but we encourage mistakes because that means people are stepping out a little bit. They're getting in an uncomfortable place. And when that happens, mistakes are going to arise. But we don't just stop there. We don't just stop when a mistake is made. It's like, okay, I see the mistake. I can't solve it, so I'm going to turn around and go home. That's not the point in a mistake. The point in a mistake is being able to walk through it and learning a bit about yourself for the person who's going through the mistake. But then as the leader, if one of your team is on a project or doing something and a mistake arises, how do you show up for them? Again, are you creating an environment where the fear of, oh my gosh, I just made a mistake and I can't tell Ed because I'm going to get yelled at or I'm going to get fired? Is it that type of an environment? Or are you creating an environment that is conducive to mistakes being made? Because then, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I don't know what to do at this point. Let me go check in with my leader. Let me go check in with my boss. Let me go check in with my manager so that they can maybe help me take a different look at things, because I know that I'm not going to get in trouble, but rather this is an opportunity for me to learn and to better myself. Is that the type of environment that you have or that you're creating, or the culture rather that you're creating? One of the things I was taught many years ago is that people are always watching. Everything we do, everything we say, people are always watching. And if you're a parent, you know that there's these little parrots, these little birds, our kids, that mimic what we do. The language that comes out of our mouth, how we interact, how our body our faces interact, everything when mistakes arise. So I want you to be careful and think about the next time a mistake happens or you hit a wall, a proverbial wall, in a meeting or on a project or whatever it is, and how you really show up for the people around you. Are you able to take a deep breath and say, okay, here's the mistake. It's okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. We're going to do it side by side. We're going to walk through it and come up with a solution That's the way that we want to show up with our team. When we're in front of our customer, if it's just me and if you're my customer, how I show up when a mistake arises. Do I pass the buck? Oh, it wasn't my fault. Oh, that sound, if I'm a mechanic, that sound was already there, or that piece was already missing. Or when a mistake arises when we're with a client or working on a project for a client, do we take ownership? So right over here on my wall are our core values for BNI San Diego, for BNI rather global. And they are givers gain, building relationships, lifelong learning, traditions plus innovations, positive attitude, accountability, and recognition. Now, obviously, accountability is a big core value for us here in BNI. But I really like the word ownership, because the ownership is about me. Accountability is about somebody else. And I want to make sure that I'm taking ownership of the things that are in front of me. Again, going back to that example of, making a mistake when you're with a client or something doesn't go right. Do we pass the buck, or do we take ownership and say, you know what? I made a mistake. It was an honest to goodness mistake, but I'm going to make it right. I'm going to make sure that I take care of what happened. I'm going to make sure that it's right for you. And what happens when you do that? So with what we do in BNI and referrals, and how with every referral, your credibility goes on to somebody else. You're transferring your credibility onto somebody else. When that situation arises and you've referred someone and a mistake happens, how you show up when that mistake happens is not only important for your customer to see, but also for your referral partner and how they see. Because when you make it right, when you take ownership and you rectify the mistake, you have just built your credibility up exponentially in the eyes of the customer, in the eyes of your referral partner, in your chapter, whoever it is. It's important that we're showing up. When we're business owners, when we're leaders, oftentimes the mistakes, especially if you're a business owner and you're working with 20, 30, 500, 1,000 employees, or on a project that's really large, the mistakes are going to be bigger and they're going to cost a lot more. And when that happens, how are we showing up? What is the culture that we're creating in whatever environment that we're in, whether it's for our business, for our family, our church, wherever, on the soccer field with the kids that you might be coaching, or whatever it is? What's that culture? How are you representing yourself when a mistake arises? What kind of an example are you for your children, for your spouse, for your employees, for your partner? How we show up is incredibly important. So we want to make sure that we're building a culture that's conducive to people being okay if they make mistakes. Now, it's not just left there because we've got to fix the mistake, but that's also part of that culture that we're trying to build. So today, I just wanted to really talk about the element of what's the point of a mistake. As you can tell, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I'm sure we could spend the next 30 minutes or an hour even talking about more, because there's so much to learn about ourselves when we come upon a situation where a mistake was made. How do I handle it? How do I see it? Am I able to look at it from a different perspective? Do I take time to step away from the situation and come back with some fresh eyes? Do I actually go and reach out to a colleague and bring them into the situation so that they can look at it with fresh eyes? Do I actually go out and ask for help? Or am I trying to do it all by myself, stressing myself out? That mistakes are going to happen. We've already talked about that. But when they happen, how we show up for the people around us is key. And I'm speaking to leaders right now, those individuals that may have a couple of people that are leading in some way, or that are dealing with clients. If you're a customer facing individual on sales and business, whatever it is, there's someone in front of you, there's a customer in front of you. Guess what? At some point, there's going to be a mistake that gets made. And I want to make sure that we're able to help you gain a different perspective on what happens during that mistake and how people look at things and how important it is that we go through the mistake and rectify the mistake, because our customers, because people around us, because our employees, our partners are watching us. So take the time to take a deep breath and realize it's going to be okay. And then either ask for help from someone to come in with some fresh eyes to help you through the mistake, or take a little bit of time away and then come back so that you've got a fresh mind and a fresh space to be able to work through that mistake. But don't stop just when you hit the wall or the mistake arises. You've got to be willing to go through it. So again, want to thank you for joining us today. A couple quick things. What's the point of a mistake? You want to make sure that you're creating a really good culture around mistakes for your business and how they're handled and how they're walked through. And then finally, as a leader, we have to show up differently when mistakes arise, whether it's our mistake, a team member's mistake, whatever it is, we have to show up differently. And if it's someone on our team on a project and they've made a mistake, guess what? The buck still stops with me. So ultimately, I take responsibility with that client, with that customer, because I am the owner of the business. So just some different things to look at. We'll be in another month or so, we'll be talking about a different topic. Sometimes they're difficult to listen to or even talk about, but that's the way we get better. When we get better by going through mistakes and learning, it helps us become a better professional, a better parent, a better leader, a better friend, whatever it is. And again, make sure you're willing and able to take ownership when things don't go the way that we hope them to go or plan on them going, basically when a mistake arises. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you back here next Tuesday morning for another episode of our BNI San Diego podcast. Hope you have a great day.
This episode of the BNI San Diego podcast has been brought to you by Cruise Productions, a San Diego-based video production company and proud BNI member. You can find us at the intersection where business and creativity meet, or online at cruiseproductionsinc.com.